Hey guys, welcome to the Liberal Hive Mind, a channel solely focused on exposing the abundant hypocrisy of the left. More and more evidence continues to drop, and the more evidence that piles up, the more the leftist narrative collapses. Frankly, I think at this point we are in full collapse mode, and really what's collapsing is the central claim. The harshest charge that we have seen so far is seditious conspiracy. A number of members of the Proud Boys organization have been charged with that exact crime. The narrative the Democrats have tried to push is that this whole thing was orchestrated by militia groups to overthrow the US government. But as we get access to more and more video evidence, an entirely different story is told. And that's really what I want to focus on for this video. Let's first start off with Jacob Chansley, otherwise known as MAGA Chewbacca QAnon Shaman Man, who has been sentenced to 4 years in federal prison. A new video emerges, which paints a very different story than the official narrative. And then I got some other things that we should get into, so let's roll the tape. Alright folks, here's the video that's currently going pretty viral on Twitter and other platforms. Breaking, censored video re-emerges of Jacob Chansley reading Trump's tweet and telling protesters to go home and remain peaceful.
We're gonna pull up the tweet. Donald Trump has asked everybody to go home. Donald Trump, quote, I am asking for everyone in the U.S. Capitol to remain peaceful, no violence. Remember, we are the party of law and order. Respect our law enforcement, and men and women in blue. Just back it up, guys. Just back it up. We're not Antifa. We are not Antifa.
We will abide, but we want to be heard. This is the people's house.
Back it up.
You know, the obvious question comes to mind, why is it that the media never showed us this? You know, the media made Jacob Chansley, the Q shaman, the face of Donald Trump's insurrection. He was supposedly leading the charge. Part of a seditious conspiracy, which was a plot organized by the Proud Boys and Donald Trump and Roger Stone to overthrow the US government. But what we actually see is the exact opposite. You know, I find it funny because the January 6th committee was trying to make the point that Donald Trump was inciting violence. Very conveniently, social media companies engaged in a collective effort to censor Donald Trump. They pretty much deplatformed him from all the major social media entities. And so his previous tweets and his previous statements disappeared from the internet, at least from his official accounts. Key information that the January 6th committee purposely left out of their report. But if the whole thing was an organized seditious conspiracy with Donald Trump and Roger Stone at the helm, then why is it that you have the Q shaman on the day of telling people we are not Antifa, listen to what Donald Trump said, do not enter the Capitol, remain peaceful, doing the exact opposite of what he's charged for, doing the exact opposite of what the mainstream liberal narrative and January 6th Select Committee narrative has been suggesting. A seditious conspiracy. I want to stick on that concept right there. Because even the woman in the crowd who happens to be the individual advocating for people to continue moving forward and entering the Capitol, even that individual isn't telling the crowd to act violently and to overthrow the government. She merely said multiple times, this is the people's house and we want our voices heard. That sounds more like a peaceful protest than it does a violent insurrection or seditious conspiracy that's organized to overthrow the US government and end democracy as we know it. I actually want to reference a tweet from the infamous late Norm Macdonald, who tweeted this on January 6, 2021. I loved when the violent terrorists made sure to respect the velvet ropes in Statuary Hall. The left is outraged at Tucker Carlson's segment that depicted the overwhelming majority of individuals as not only peaceful, but as showing reverence and respect for the Capitol as they wandered around seemingly aimlessly. Again, let's go back to the core of the leftist narrative. An organized, seditious plot, a seditious conspiracy to overthrow the US government. Then the reality of the video footage, people walking around aimlessly, non-violently, even respecting the velvet ropes in Statuary Hall. People walking around aimlessly, organized seditious conspiracy. Do those two concepts go together? They seem completely at odds. It seems quite paradoxical. Only one organized plot, and it certainly isn't from the protesters. I don't know about you guys, but more than 2 years later, I'm still sitting here asking the same damn question. Who is Ray Epps? You know, Kash Patel raised a good question on Timcast the other night.
Yeah, I'm not saying I know definitively. What I'm saying is a reasonable suspicion is that there were agents. There's a video showing a guy with an earpiece pulling people into the building. All right? You combine that with the evidence of Ray Epps, and it looks like you have a preponderance of evidence suggesting there may have been federal law enforcement involved in making that thing happen.
I'll get you beyond a reasonable doubt.
All
Two
right.
pieces of information. Ray Epps was on FBI's most wanted list one day, and the next day he was off of the FBI's most wanted list. There are only two ways that happens. You die, or your informant. Put that aside. Under congressional testimony, Jill Sanborn, who I used to work with, the head of the FBI Counterintelligence Division, in charge of all these investigations, testified under oath when Senator Cruz asked her, flat out, were there federal agents involved with January 6th? And she said, quote, Senator, I can't answer that at this time. Not if the answer was definitively no, having been a DOJ FBI guy myself, she would have gone there and said, nope, absolutely not. The reason she said I can't answer that is because of the same stonewalling they gave us during Russiagate with Christopher Steele, Halper, and everybody else. It's the same narrative, and I'm telling you they were there.
So you're saying that she said I can't answer that because the answer is yes, and that would compromise whatever their operation was.
Exactly.
Ray Epps was the one individual who was clearly there to incite a riot. There's a text message on his phone to his own son on the day of January 6th as he was there on the ground, which reads, quote, I orchestrated it. He's also been found to lie under oath in his testimony, giving a false accounting of his actions on the day. There's ample video evidence. I'm not going to play it because it flags the video, but there's ample video evidence of him clearly inciting a mob, and yet he just disappeared from the FBI's most wanted list. You know, considering the FBI involvement and clear entrapment in the Gretchen Whitmer kidnap plot case, the only thoughts that I have when I think about an organized plot or an organized conspiracy has nothing to do with Donald Trump, Roger Stone, Alex Jones, the Proud Boys, or any other supposed right-wing militia group. The only thing that comes to mind is, who is Ray Epps? How is the House Sergeant at Arms Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer involved, based on all the leaked messages between Nancy Pelosi's office and the House Sergeant at Arms and all the testimony that we've heard? How are they involved in an organized plot to create a massive political psyop? That to me seems to be the only legitimate question. That should be the real target of investigations moving forward. In my view, Jacob Chansley did nothing wrong, if anything, considering how hyped up the mob was and considering just how intense and adrenaline-filled that day was. It seems as though he was remarkably peaceful and had one intention the entire time: to protest, not to insurrect. He tried to calm the crowd down. He was escorted by police peacefully, and the idea that he was sentenced to 4 years in federal prison for that seems honestly unimaginable. There was no organized seditious conspiracy plot. Democrats made it up and they propped up that narrative with lies. And the craziest part is that they're putting people in solitary confinement and sending people to prison for years away from their families based on what seems to be a false political premise. Let that sink in. That's what I got for you guys. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, make sure to leave a like and possibly subscribe to the channel. Of course, you know, we would love to have you here at the Liberal Hive Mind. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.